I'm Mark Ramsey. I am really proud to be talking to Clive Dickens. Clive is not a name on the lips of everybody in the U.S., but I don't know, Clive, maybe that's going to change because you're doing some interesting things out there across the pond. Clive is the COO of Absolute Radio in the UK. Absolute Radio is one of the 3 commercial national broadcasters in the UK. So, in other words, Clive, it's a big deal, correct?
Yeah, we were about 3 million weekly cum, and the UK radio here, Absolute Radio's business is just under 4 years old, and we're sort of like top 5 brand, if you like, in the UK space.
Now, you have been doing some really interesting things in kind of developing the definition of radio and the progress of radio across platforms from analog to digital and so on. And I want to talk with you about one aspect of that in particular, which I find interesting. As you know, in the U.S., historically, largely due to union rules, there's been a separation between what happens on the radio streams in terms of advertising and what happens over the air in terms of advertising. Broadcasters in the U.S. would dearly love to match those two things together so that the spot can run on the air and on the stream at the same time, and it can be counted in the ratings, it can be monetized in the traditional way, and it's one big happy party. You, historically, have had no such restraint. Historically, you've been able to match those two things, the spots on the air with the spots on the stream. And you've done something really, really interesting in the past 12 months or so that I think the folks in the U.S. should appreciate. You have gone the other direction. You have separated the stream in terms of advertising from what's on the air in terms of advertising. Please talk about why you've done that, what your intention is, and where you see it going.
Well, first and foremost, we very much believe in the broadcasting business model. For us, it's about broadcasting one-to-many, and the ambition with our in-stream product is to have advertising one-to-one. There's a holy grail of data floating around in the IP world where brands need to have even greater understanding of the investment they're making in marketing. And the radio broadcast metrics, based on diaries and listening and PPM, that's perfect for that broadcast model. But where we very much wanted to grow our audience, through a legacy of having quite a large amount of people enjoying Absolute Radio via IP, upwards of about 10 to 12% of our hours on IP, we just increasingly believed that we could actually do something with that connection. So rather than, we absolutely happy to estimate our broadcast audience, but we could actually measure our IP audience. Mm-hmm. And also the other factor that was going on in British broadcasting is that the cost per thousand for British commercial broadcasting was just heading south. The ability to convince big brands to spend more money in radio, and particularly on a sort of CPT, cost per point basis, was declining. And that's partly because 50% of all radio listening in the UK is without commercials. You can hear Rihanna without any ads, you can hear news without ads, you can hear the Eagles without ads, you can hear all the main CHLHC news positions without ads. So commercial radio here has had to innovate even more rapidly in content. And so when we came to our in-stream proposition, we said, okay, we need to pull all these together and say, what can we do to create a new business opportunity around in-stream? That's 10% of our audience that's enjoying us on an IP connection. What can we voluntarily get from their relationship that allows us to reposition them back to the marketplace as being a much more valuable audience to brands than the audience they traditionally get from broadcast, which is also valuable, but there's a delta of sort of valuation there.
Right, there's a difference. So give me an illustration of how you've accomplished that, how you've illustrated that increased value to your advertisers. Give me an example.
Okay, so the first thing for us to get from last year was that targeting someone who's listening on the internet, who we had their IP address of, that's not a premium. What was the premium is, okay, what could we get from that relationship? So first of all, we created the Absolute Radio account, where we said to people, actually, we've been gathering for years these really pointless VIP newsletter lists. Yeah. We had 400,000 opted-in VIPs. Were these? They weren't really VIPs. They were just an email newsletter database. So we completely scrapped that and said, now let's go back to basics. Let's create an Absolute Radio account. And we will ask people to volunteer privacy information about themselves, much deeper than we can get from sample-based estimate data, in return for additional services. So you now sign up and log in for an AFTRA Radio account, and you get access to our high-quality webcams. You get further content from our interviews and sessions that we do. You get much higher quality streams, 4 to 5 times higher quality bit rates. But most importantly, as from today, in fact, you get more songs. If you are logged in and enjoying AFTRA Radio, you get more music than you do if you're enjoying AFTRA Radio in the car or in the kitchen. And the reason that we were able to do that, extrapolation, was that we've successfully spent the last 12 months convincing our agencies and clients that the data that we're capturing, this opt-in data we're capturing with our community, is actually more valuable to them, and therefore, by definition, is more expensive. And if it's more expensive, our philosophical view is if we're achieving more value from our community, why wouldn't we share back some of that value with them? And sharing back in the initial version has been, we'll give you more of what you love. You get more music if you're signed up, logged in, and streaming.
Everyone is now registering, or a lot of people are registering, and their reward for registering is they get more stuff they didn't get before, and then you carry that registration information to the advertiser to communicate greater value for those people so you can sell it for more money. How do you do that?
Well, first of all, we give the advertiser a 10-point plan of why in-stream is a premium product over broadcast. We're a broadcaster. We have scale in broadcasting. Sample-based estimate business models still work. They're really important. And we're not a one-to-one content company. We believe in broadcasting. We're not even a sole webcaster. Our in-stream product is an over-the-top additional way of achieving more value and premium for advertisers. It's really important to point that out. So the way we do that, we go and say, right, so this is what you can achieve on broadcasting based on all of the exactly the same metrics that happen in North America and Europe have done for the last 40, 50 years. But here's the additional data points that you get when you are targeting an in-streamer. So, there's effectively 10 points in that, including things like we no longer lump people into demographic cells. We get their exact age. So exact age is something that is, there's not something that you can buy against in broadcast. We get their active location. So if you have a diary or, and you live out in the suburbs, your listening in the UK is recorded to that, is recorded to that postcode, that location. Whereas, of course, if you travel into London and you listen to, some of the fantastic radio stations available to you in London, like Capital FM or Heart or Absolute Radio, that's an active location. Whereas a broadcast impression can only deal with you where your diary has been placed. Whereas an active location, well, if you come into a different area and different forms of advertising will start to trigger you. Your life is very active and your diary methods are very static. We go in there and talk about, capturing the visualization that you get with in-stream. So, we are encouraging people to pop the players on our mobile applications and our radio player to say, look, actually, where there's an opportunity to engage with the ad in-stream, not just pre-roll. Our founder advertisers are encouraging creative to say interact with the ad, click the ad, interact with the ad, which of course the creative in radio has never been built around that. It's been built on radio's brilliance of being the medium, the multitasking medium, the medium you consume whilst doing something else. And the fundamentals of radio are still the same. But when you've got a great big screen in front of you, either a small retina screen or a laptop or a PC, then why not use the assets available to you? So that their clickable nature of experiencing. So and the list goes on in terms of actually going around to the advertiser and saying, here's the sort of 10 reasons why we believe that this logged in listener with all this data they shared with us should be viewed as a more valuable relationship and therefore a more expensive one.
Well, Clive, let me ask you the hard question then. I mean, you're across the pond there. You're looking at American broadcasters, and American broadcasters are right now here today in the position that you have evolved to because you've deliberately chosen to separate the in-stream advertising from the over-the-air advertising. American broadcasters are here saying, we want to unify those two things. I mean, what advice would you offer to American broadcasters who are thinking of doing exactly the opposite of what you're doing?
Don't do it. I mean, quite literally, I can't understand for a moment why you'd want to bundle internet listening with broadcast impacts, because the law of diminishing returns will kick in, where someone will just say it's just another platform like cable TV or AM/FM or any other form of way or mobile. And the reality is, it's not just another platform. It's an opportunity to change your relationship with your P1s particularly, you know, sort of typical 80-20, and then to change your relationship with your top 20 advertisers and say, no, this is different. This is about, you know, of course, broadcasting works, ad impacts works. But here is a chance to say, no, we'll keep it separate. The technology now exists. We came up with this concept 3 years ago, and at that point, there was no technology that could reliably serve, you know, this type of ad copy, visualized, clickable to an infinite amount of streams. You know, I could understand maybe 2 or 3 years ago saying, I want to capture my listening on the internet. It's really popular. But with actually, you know, you can just do something so much more, and you can actually benefit from this data. Data is the new oil of our economies, and the broadcast industry, the radio industry, has also got to understand data more. So the last thing I'd say on that is also don't stop away from the hard job. The hard job is actually realizing you've got to have a relationship. We talk about radio's relationship with its consumers. We talk about how it's the very influential medium. I hear you talk about, Mark, about the loud halo impact, really powerful, positive statements about radio. But if we really believe that there's a relationship there, then we've got to work hard to prove it. And, you know, people log in, sign up, log in, and use things they value. No one expects to be a chore to remember their Gmail password, their Facebook password, their bank account login. So how engaged really were your community if they wouldn't log in and share some data with you? Some of them in the car, I appreciate you can't, too much friction in the kitchen, they can still get the broadcast log. But where you've got an opportunity of a color, touchscreen interface, test the strength of your brand relationship. Encourage people to share some privacy data with you for some clear, tangible consumer benefits. And then you can present that data back to the marketplace and say, here's evidence of this phenomenal relationship that we know radio's enjoyed for many decades.
That's great advice, Clive, because as you know, a lot of broadcasters in the U.S. Are, for example, are afraid to do that kind of thing because they're afraid that not enough people will register, thus illustrating exactly the wrong point. Whereas your point is, look, if you make the offerings attractive enough and you believe you have a relationship with these people, it's incumbent upon you to prove it. Your advertisers expect you to prove it. And it's an opportunity, a great opportunity for you to prove it to yourself, your advertisers, and your consumers. Require registration, but offer enough value to justify it, right?
Don't underestimate your audience. Don't underestimate the power of your brand. And, you know, ultimately, people sign up and log into the things they value. You know, our simple proposition, if you strip it all away, is as simple as you get more music if you log in. Now, we all have spent years, decades doing 10 in a row, 5 in a row. We know that more music is a changer of behavior. So why not actually take what we've learned from the last 3-4 decades, put that into the stream and say, well, we actually give the streamers more music, even if you have to pay, you know, some sort of investment in those extended rights. It's only for your signed up and logged in streamers. And, you know, we're now enjoying 10,000 new registrations a week of people are saying, hey, I'm gonna join this service. And because there's no money involved, it's just a simple exchange of privacy data in return for a clear consumer proposition from my favorite brand.
There's a lot to be learned from the fabulous Clive Dickens, COO of Absolute Radio UK. Clive, this has been just awesome. Thank you so much for everything you're doing out there, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Mark. Great to talk to you too.